when my mum passed away, I instantly felt very different to everybody else.
And how old were you when
I was 20. Yeah, it was 3 days before my 21st birthday. And I was loving life, like living abroad, having the time of my life. And it was like, I was trying to kind of rehearse it on the way here and like how to describe it. And there really is no way of describing it, but it was just like an unwelcome disaster, you know, just like something that you did not foresee, something that you never, ever, ever anticipated would happen to you. And of course, at some stage, you're going to start losing your family when they're older and things are going to change, and, you know, you meet your own partner and have your own children, hopefully. But at this stage of my life, I was coming out of like adolescence into early adulthood, and I had nothing really of my own in terms of like, I didn't have my own home. I didn't have financial stability. I didn't have a partner. I had friends, and of course I had my family, but that was it. So when I lost mum, I hate saying lost because it's like I'm trying to find her, but when mum died, it was overnight, literally. So I tried to continue to be the Lou I was the night before it happened, and over time that just got harder and harder and harder because I felt I just didn't belong in that position that I held before mum had died. So I wasn't the girl I was before it happened. That's how I really felt. So there was a sense of not belonging anymore, even though nothing really had changed in how people behaved towards me. It was just suddenly I wasn't the same as everybody else. And as much as people say, you know, you're exactly the same to us, like it doesn't matter what's happened, like you're still the same Lou that you always has been. It was impossible for me to continue the facade. And I use the word facade because I feel as though that basically kept me going for a long time. And it gets to a point where you're just like, you're living a bit of a fake life, really. So I think I tried to keep it up, and it kind of got weaker and weaker and weaker over time. And then I kind of tried to move on, and then my dad got very sick, and then that was an extra thing on top that basically made me lose my identity even more. And it's probably really interesting to kind of, if I could hear myself talking now 6 years ago, because I don't think identity would have like come into it. I would have always said, well, if I just keep pushing and keep trying, like I'll always be exactly who I am because of the person I've been brought up to be. But I look at myself and I think, no, now it is a question of identity. Like I completely lost who I was. And only now, 6-7 years later, I'm still like stumbling, you know, like I'm still trying to find it. And it is there, like, of course it's there. But yeah, Dad got very sick and sadly died 11 months after my mum. And we were just left just in tatter. Like it was just, I can't even find the words really. So if you think about how you feel when you have a rubbish day or a rubbish week, or even just like a rubbish time in your life, like that time for me was like years and years and years. And I think if it didn't affect me, or if it hadn't affected me to the level that it has, I think that wouldn't be human. Like, of course, you know, I think about it every day, but there are, I don't know, I go off in different like junctions in my head. Like there are so many different things that I've encountered and suffered from. But the kind of like core of it all is like identity and belonging, like you say. So it's been hard.
I just feel like I need to take a big intake, sip some water,
water.
a big intake of breath.
Because I'm going to go off on tangents. And
no, honestly, I must admit, like, I've never, even though we've like hung out with each other a few times, I've never heard you like the full extent, and it's I'm not usually lost for words, but I'm struggling to like just straight away say like how I think the thing that struck me the most is that I'll be straight. I've actually not had that much experience with grief in my life, really. Like I lost my grandparents quite young, and I wasn't really old enough, to be honest, to grieve or to really know what's happening. Lost an uncle I was close to when I was at uni, similar age, but I was at uni, I was away as an uncle, so I wasn't as sort of heartbroken as his daughters were, like, let's say. And so I've only really feel like I've experienced grief secondhand through other people, basically. And just what I'm sort of almost amazed by. I know you're 6 years on now. 6, yeah. Well, 6 years of, like you said, thinking about it every day, and I can only imagine is that you're almost not blaming anything else. You're not saying like, oh, it was. I'm sure there was part of you that was angry about stuff, but the fact that you've then said actually it affected my identity. I don't know. It is kind of amazing, inspiring. Just to hear you talk about identity in that is so. I wouldn't expect it. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the identity thing is something that I think I've really had to think about through counselling that I've gone through, and just my own experiences since the 2 deaths. So the biggest thing I would say, and it's ironic obviously because you focus on mental health at work, but it is going to work and it is making new friends since mum and dad died. And I'm sure there are lots of people who have encountered catastrophic grief and have come out of this not relating any of it to identity. So I don't sit here and say, oh, it's all about identity, it's all about this, because this is just my personal feeling towards it. But going to work, because I was at a stage where I hadn't really forged like a career path. So I just completed university basically, and I'd lost both my parents. So it was like, I didn't really know which way to go. So actually I ended up just taking loads of time out and going and seeing the world, because I was running away. And I hate when people say that to me. They were like, it's escapism. I'm like, yeah, but would you rather me do that or do something awful and sit here and drink myself silly or go out and spend loads of money? And I don't know, for me it was like the lesser two evils. It was like, okay, well, let's go and do something productive that at least I can look back on and say I felt awful, but I've got this photograph to show of it on a pretty mountain, like at least here I was trying to have a good time. And I did, and I had some really nice times. So that was that. And then it was a case of like, right, what am I going to do now? And like, we'd done this language degree at university, which we all loved, and it was like really employable, blah, blah, blah. But actually, I didn't really want to do that. So I remember sitting in the hospital waiting for my dad to die, literally waiting. And I was studying at the same time. And it was just like, I've got this like metaphor. Like, it was like someone had like picked me and my family up out of like a puppet box, and they were like playing us. So it was like, like you literally lost control of my life. And I'm sitting there trying to learn like French phrases for essays and oral exams, and like just crazy. And
I bet you just thought, fuck it.
Yeah, it was.
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
No,
it was awful.
So you're at uni. What year were you?
So I was. So when mum passed away, it was our sandwich year, which is our 3rd year out of 4. So having almost completed the sandwich year, mum died, then I had to basically decide whether I was going to continue and finish the degree, so go on to the 4th and final year. And my dad was like so pro-education, so driven. He was like, yes, you are going back. Like, we fully support you going back to your finals. I was like, okay. And actually that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back, be with my friends and, finish what I started. So did that. And then it was kind of December, a final year, approaching Christmas. My dad had been, very sick with grief. He was losing a lot of weight. He I think he'd just gone back to work, but he was trying to function, but it was pretty awful for him. My sister was living at home with him, and, she had a very different experience to me because I was living away, but she noticed obviously the weight loss was getting worse. He was displaying other symptoms of kind of physical pain that weren't necessarily related to grief. So went for some checkups, nothing really kind of significant was going on. This kind of went on and on up until right before Christmas. He was sent for some scans, and we went away for Christmas just to kind of escape reality. Christmas is obviously a hard time when you're not feeling jolly and bright. So we went away to Spain, came back on New Year's Day, and on 2nd of January 2013 he had the scan results that basically showed that he had significant cancer of the bowel and had spread significantly to his liver. So we were then struck down again. That then left me at another crossroads with my studies. I was doing final exams in the January. Dad was kind of at a crossroads whether or not he would be accepted for chemotherapy. In the end, he was. Started with that. Luckily, I was only kind of an hour away from university to home, so I could travel back quite freely. Managed to get the finals done in January and just rearranged my timetable so that every Friday I could go home from Sheffield back to East Yorkshire, to York, spend 3 days with him and just kind of relieve my sister, really, and obviously spend time with him. And it's important to say that at no point in my mind at this stage did I ever think that my dad was going to die. Like, I never, ever thought, because it was impossible. There was no way that would happen. How could that happen? Like, it was just impossible. So
how could it be fair as well?
Yeah, it was just like we are going through this awful situation, and suddenly now we're going through it doubly again. Had to leave like the grief for my mum at one side and basically focus on getting Dad through treatment, getting my exams done. Reached a point kind of April time, he started getting deteriorating at home. He was admitted into hospital. He was told he would stay for some rehydration. He wasn't really drinking and eating, and he never came out. So I had all these kind of decisions to make as to whether I would postpone my exams, continue my exams, retake the year, all of those kind of big things that universities give you options about. And I said, no, like I've got to finish it, because I'm not going to go through this as well as like double grief in another year's time. So got that degree done, went off travelling, came back, but I remember thinking, as Dad died, I thought, this hospital, although it's awful, I'm so fascinated by like what is going on behind each door. And I was pretty scared, actually, like when I think back to actually watching Dad decline. There's like a very kind of tangible, like plausible reason why, but I was very scared to physically watch him kind of die. So I stayed out of the room quite a lot, but I remember seeing glimpses of the nurses going in, and I was like, wow, what are they doing in there? And at that point I was like, actually, I think I want to work in a hospital. I think I want to work with people who maybe aren't going to get better. And it was madness. I remember saying to my sisters, I think I want to be a nurse. And they were like, no, like that's probably just because you're feeling emotional. But I did. I really did. So then I was kind of going back and forth, trying to decide if I wanted to do the course or not. Managed to become a nurse, fast forward 2 years' time. And even being a nurse now, I would say it's probably harder than ever, even though I work with people who are amazing and who understand life and death more than anybody. It's really hard to properly get to know people with what I feel is such baggage and like such a story. And yeah, you can say, hi, how are you? I'm Louise. Nice to meet you. But, one of the first things people say to me, oh, what are you doing at the weekend? I'm going to see my boyfriend. Oh, where's that? Oh, in the north. Is at home? how do I answer that without having to explain everything? So then you just lie, and a lie becomes another lie, another lie, another lie, and it's just layered, and then you just not yourself.
And I'm going to go back a bit. You know that kind of period where you did your finals? Like, how did you get through that bit?
I don't know. I remember I had contact with one of the university lecturers, and he said, you know, we're kind of all at your, what's the word? I can't think. Like, we will do anything basically for you. And I said, well, you don't need to, because I'm going to try. But they let me study and kind of from a distance. They let me, like, you know, not attend lectures, and they were very good like that. But I did my exams separate from everybody else, and that was really hard because I didn't see my friends at all. It was quite isolating. But I suppose I just saw it as a means to an end, and it was a distraction. It was actually a distraction from what was going on. So the morning my dad died, I had an exam. I didn't know he died. So he died early hours of the morning. My exam was at 9:00. So my sisters made, you know, horrific decision, but a wise one at the time, to not tell me until I'd come out of this exam. So when I got the exam, I was really, like, almost felt normal, because I was like, wow, that exam went really well. Like, I really felt like I answered that question great. And I got home, and it was actually my cousin who collected me, and she listened, and I was like, oh yeah, this question came up and I think I did really well. And I remember for like 10 minutes she was just like smiling and nodding, and then she said, oh, that's great. And I was like, oh, and how's dad? And she said, oh, Lou. And she kind of just, you know, you just know, don't you? And I didn't cry. I was like, okay, fine. And it honestly felt like I could breathe. I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I knew that it was going to happen at that stage. And I just sort of gathered more books to keep studying in my handbag. And off we went home. And it was, really weird, because I don't think I could do that now. I don't know how I did it. It was adrenaline, it was like emotion, it was pushing for my dad, it was pushing, because I remember asking him as he was kind of going into more of a deep sleep, I was like, what do I do? I was like, do I continue? Do I stop? And he said, I don't think he actually could say anything, but he sort of like squeezed my hand or something, and I was like, right, that's kind of my green light to keep going. And I suppose, and what kept me going as well is knowing that there were probably out there some other people going through something like this. I've never found them. I've never found those
Not
people. But yeah, I was like, do you know what? I won't be the first, and I will not be the last to go through this. And that has kind of followed me, that attitude. Like, I'm not on my own here. There will be somebody else going through this today, right now, probably.
Just the fact you were thinking like that, and
strength.
I was just about to say, finding that inner voice and strength is, like, just from me hearing this, like, your story for the first time, it's honestly overwhelming. Like, I'm a bit lost for words. Like, finding, just hearing that was one of your thoughts. There must be other people out there. It can't just be me. I need to, keep doing this. I think that's, it's impressive.
When you mentioned, like, obviously, I know you've fast forwarded a lot. I'm sure there was a lot in between the bit where you're now down in London and you're at work, and still, even to this day, like, finding it hard to answer kind of like mundane questions, which I can only imagine, like Christmas.
Yeah.
God, I mean,
Such a puzzle.
It's an absolute bugger for, what you're doing for Christmas. It's such a, like, a simple, like, people are not asking that with any malice either. And I was just curious, and I would love to, like, talk a bit more about the workplace, because obviously it's an interesting one for us and for everyone. But I was just wondering, like, where else, like, what other is obviously, like, where else has it come up, or was there other places in your life that it kind of had an impact?
It's like, for that time specifically, your mates at uni and stuff. How much did you tell? How much did you share?
But I suppose relationships in general.
So friendships, I went a bit quiet, really. I was just a bit kind of like uncontactable. I would tell people what they needed to know. I actually did quite a lot of fundraising for my dad. So kind of don't regret it now, but I kind of do regret telling the story quite publicly at the time, because I don't think that was maybe what my dad wanted. But I needed something to motivate myself. So it was just, just like a marathon or half marathon. And I remember a family friend saying to me, have you actually asked your dad whether he wants you to tell people? And I was like, well, not really. But I kind of just thought, well, but I need to do something, I needed to do something, and people needed to know what was going on. So I suppose that was the most I told people. But when it started getting really tough, my friends were amazing. But we were 21, so what do you do with somebody who's like inconsolable? I mean, I wasn't even crying. That's the worst thing. I was just kind of existing. I was so hollow. And I think that was even harder for them. Like, if I was crying, at least they could like pass me a tissue, or
at least with some content to work with.
Yeah. And one massive thing that came from all of this, like a physical symptom of it, was like I hated to be touched. I hated like being hugged. Hated to be just like close to people. So that was difficult, because people would naturally offer me, condolence and support. We like to touch, don't we? Like, as humans, we like to be like very tactile, and I hated it. So I was difficult. I was a difficult friend, and I'm very grateful that people stuck by me. Relationships, kind of romantically, that has been probably the hardest for me, because when I look back now at kind of dating, I remember being greeted with like a couple of like awful lines that I just won't ever forget. Things like, I don't know how to phrase it. It was like, I basically can't be with you because I can't be your dad. I can't be the guy that you need me to be because I'm not your dad. And I was like, I'm not really asking you to be my dad. Like, it's a bit weird. I just wanted to be normal, that's all I wanted. But to be greeted with such things, it was like really hard. And I think someone else said to me once, like, like, you've just got too much baggage. You've just got too much stuff going on. You need to like sort your stuff out on your own. So yeah, finding somebody who would accept me and actually, listen to my story without forming any judgment, and actually without putting it then on themselves, thinking, oh God, I've got loads to do with this girl, or like, this is going to be a bit heavy. That was really hard. And again, like the workplace questions on a date, what your parents do? Just lie,
I imagine some people couldn't handle it. No. Do you know what I mean? So if they're
it's not really a great chat line, is it? Like, do you want to listen to something fun?
Are you ready? Yeah.
But I bet you couldn't either. It's like, I can't be bothered to have this conversation again. Can we?
No.
Yeah. And do you feel like we talk a lot here about like the perception of mental health and that it needs to change? Like, did you feel like there was a misunderstanding when you talk about kind of, you felt like you wanted to be on your own, and maybe you were a bit quiet and your friends didn't quite know what to do about that? You kind of talk about these dates, and again, people aren't sure like what to say. Do you feel like there was feel like there was like a judgment? Did you ever feel judged? Did you like the perception of mental health or even grief? Wasn't really talked about back then.
Yeah, grief is so silent. Like, it's so different for everybody. But because we're of an age where nobody knew what grief really was, I just felt like I wasn't stigmatized at all. But for me, in my head, I was the girl who was orphaned, basically. And that's like a very bold word to use, but I felt as though, I just had a little corner on my own, and nobody was in my club, It was like, there were times when, like, simple things like people would go out very close after Dad had passed away, and I was really angry because I was like, well, I want to go out, like, I want to have a drink and celebrate finishing my exams, but I can't even, like, I can't even eat a full meal, and let alone have a Jaeger bomb, you know, like I couldn't even like think about going out. And I was really angry at people because I was like, how are you not being more sensitive to what's happening to me? But of course it doesn't stop people's lives, even if they are so close to you. So the anger was a huge thing. I just felt so lonely. I just felt so different to everybody. And no matter what people said, you know, we're here for you, or we will try and understand, like, and, you know, providing practical support, cooking meals, taking me out places. You feel like an old biddy. Like, you feel like people are literally like coming out and like giving you a day trip and then dropping you off, and you're just like, when did I become like so unstable? Like, when did I become like disabled? Like, when was I like this person? This was not my destiny at all. And yeah, it's interesting to look
like no one gets it. It's almost similar to the school. It's like this mentioned the school thing at the start, but on like another completely different level of like no one gets it. I don't feel included. I feel like alone.
Completely.
As I imagine, as much as anyone says they get it, they or you might feel like they don't.
I don't think anyone even ever really said like I understand, because I don't think they could. But I remember it was the having to console other people. So I'm sure, like, you know, a lot of people who go through grief or are going through the loss of a relative, like it's having to explain what's happened again and again and again to people and dealing with their reaction. And then actually the role's completely reversed, because you're the one that's like, oh, actually, Dad's died. And it's, oh gosh, oh my goodness, maybe some tears. What are you going to do? Shock, all of these emotions. And I'm like, yes, I know. Like, I've gone through that every single day, but I'm now taking on your worry and your feelings. And it's like, what am I doing?
I can see why you asked that question. Like, do you think people knew how to handle you? Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, because it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like people maybe they almost can't handle it themselves. So you're then I remember I listened to a podcast on cancer once called You, Me and the Big C. Shout out for that, because it's sick. And they were joking, saying like, when you've got cancer, you tell someone you've got cancer, then the other person cries and you have to console them, which it's as if people can't deal with it themselves. So you're then supporting them.
Absolutely. And even now when people say to me, you know, or I hear bad news at work, or a friend will say something, you know, is happening to her or him, like it is still really hard, because I thought, God, I'll be boss at this. Like, I'll literally be like, right, this is what you need to do. But you're not. Like, you forget, and you do, and you think, right, what did I hate hearing at the time? What did I need to hear? And, you know, I hate, like, oh, sorry for your loss. I hate that.
That was the thing that came up, like, that was the exact sentence that came, because I'll never forget. This is completely unrelated, so I'm not trying to, like, compete on the who's had it worse scale, but I never forget when I first started talking out about mental health, and I told someone that I'd, you know, had panic attacks and whatnot, and someone went to me, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And I was like, mate, like, I'm not fucking like, do you know what I mean? I was like, what does that mean? It's this whole thing, sympathy over empathy, or like it's something about that.
But do you think, Liv, we lived in more of like an open, vulnerable world? You know, you touched on earlier experiences where you didn't quite feel yourself when you were a bit younger. Yeah. But it wasn't we don't live in a world where you can openly talk about that. Do you feel like if the perceptions have changed, living in the future, let's fast forward, how would that have impacted your experience at the time? Would it have impacted it?
I think because everybody always seems so fine and so great, I'm a bit of a sucker for like buying into that. So I'm like, oh gosh, I can't really expose what I'm feeling, because I'm then again the loose, you know, I'm the weak link. And I do think there's such a lack of truth, you know, like actually take away all the crap, like take away everything, what is actually going on in your life. And that's why, like, it's been so nice to talk to you about things, because it's so rare to get that. And I think when you find someone or a group of people that you can do that with, like, it is life-changing. It is life-changing to be able to be honest. And, you know, I sometimes hate the people like, oh, I'll be honest. It's like, well, you're not being honest. Like, you're not, because do you actually think that? And, you know, I'm not sitting here and saying I'm honest all the time, because I'm definitely not. Like, I'll say I'm fine every day, and I'm maybe not. But, yeah, I would love there to be more of a culture of, you know, I can only really relate it to grief, but more of a culture of like, hey, like, do you remember that time when you were like really depressed? Oh, like, I had that the other day. And it's like chit chat, you know, because why is it so scary to talk about it? Yes, because it's negative and we maybe don't want to feel that way, and we don't want to lose relatives, and we don't want to lose friends. Of course we don't, but it will happen. And inevitably, when it does happen to you, what are you going to do? Like, go down the same path as everybody else who feels it? Like, there's such a lack of community, like there's such a lack of like accountability. It's like, okay, if I could sit here and there were 5 people around this table who had gone through something similar to me, and if I could say like, hey, did anybody else feel like they thought something really inappropriate at the time, like that you shouldn't be feeling, like, am I a really bad person for that? And someone else said, oh my God, no. Like, that would be so cool to like hear someone say like, oh, totally get it. And that's what I've really lacked. And, you know, you can go and see private counsellors and you can talk to people who you know, but actually it's not helpful in kind of the grand scheme of things, because private counsellors are expensive, and unless you live in the same place for a really long time, you can't stay with the same counsellor for all your life. And then they say, well, actually, it's really good because you should change who you speak to, so they get like, you know, different perspectives. But I'm like, well, I don't want to tell my story again. I'm like, well, actually, I do want to tell it, but I want to tell it to someone who feels the same things as me. So yeah, I do. I think it would be revolutionary. I really do.
You got anything else?
I've got loads. I could go.
I was just it's a similar question to that. It's the only other other than a billion other things that I would love to ask you, obviously, but we can do that another time. It's just like, what did you want to hear from people? You know, I'm probably selfishly asking that, because like you said, we're all, grief in particular, we're all going to go through it. And yeah, like what do you wish people had? Well, it's maybe two-pronged attack on this question. Like, what do you wish people had done for you in, you know, when they were like speaking to you and interacting with you, and was there any of your behaviour that you know anything you wish you'd have done more as well?
So really wish that it's hard, because I don't want to sound like I'm ungrateful for the things that I did have, because it was, you know, amazing. I suppose it was always helpful to have practical solutions to things. It was always helpful to be told, okay, try something like so simple, like, why don't you do a bit of cooking today? Well, don't really want to, but it was like, okay, maybe that will take my mind off it. Practical solutions were always really good, but I also, don't know, got a bit angry at that as well. Like, I was always a bit angry. I wish, I kind of stick by that phrase, like, if you haven't got anything nice to say or helpful to say, don't say anything at all. And I know that's a bit like, you know, sticking 2 things up, but, you know, I suppose I did isolate myself, but I was comfortable with that. And I think sometimes trying to like reach in and grab someone out too soon of a dark place, it's a little bit intimidating. Actually, it's like, just leave me.
Sounds like you wanted to just be like, fuck everyone, just fuck off. I'm angry,
me.
I'm pissed off, just like leave me alone, and don't judge me for that. Just let me do that.
Don't make yourself feel better by being a martyr,
because it sounds like you were, because you were angry and had all this emotion, you were trying to kind of control it to not upset your friends.
Yeah, definitely. I think I would have loved to just let rip and actually, like, you know, maybe like written it all down or like drawn it all out and actually said to them, like, look, this is now what I'm facing. Have you got any solutions to this? Because I don't. So I think Yeah, like, or just like support groups or something, just like with people who I kind of probably wouldn't have been ready to do this, even to talk about this a long time ago. But I think just to be able to sit and just like vent a bit and not have people talking back at me saying, okay, like, it's normal that you feel like that. And it's like, no, it's not normal. Like, this is not normal.
It's like you almost want someone to just like be alongside you. Do you know what I mean? Like, rather than trying to like put you back in your box and like say, oh, Lou, like, of course you would feel like that. You almost want someone to be angry with.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah,
exactly.
fucking hell, it is shit, actually.
Yeah.
Let's fucking burn the walls down or whatever, you know, rather than kind of, it's like, rather than pretend to get it, like, just either, like you said, either say nothing or be next to you, sort of
like,
thing.
even with my poor family, like, I was horrible.
Have you got sisters?
Yeah, 2 older sisters.
So you're the youngest?
I'm the baby, yeah. And for them, obviously they're going through exactly the same thing as me, but you all suffer in such different ways. So the 3 of us, we're all very different anyway, but you suffer in ways that only you can relate to. So like, my experiences with my mum and my dad's loss were completely different to my sisters. So you almost start like, well, my grief's worse than yours because I was there for that and you weren't. Yeah. And, you know, I feel awful saying that, but actually it's the truth. And you start thinking, well, have you got right to feel that upset? Because I was probably the last person to do that with dad or to say that to mum. And I really had that a lot. What was the second thing you said? What was the second question?
How you wish you... Is there anything? Obviously, there's the stuff you hope possibly other people could have done differently to support you, but could you have done anything differently to support yourself?
I would have totally dropped the act. Like, I would have. Like, I remember a couple of days after mum died, I was like out with my mates, going for walks, like talking about stuff, and it's a distraction, but it was exhausting. And actually, that energy I could have used, like, I don't know, talking to my dad or doing something that I wanted to do. I'm not really sure what it was at the time, but like, I remember so vividly, like, using all this energy up, and I'd get home and it's like 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock. My dad's like, where have you been? I was like, oh, I've just been out. And he's like, do you not think there's more important stuff than you going out with your mates? And I was like, and then it start, you know, an argument, because I was like, well, actually, that's really important for me. But now I look back and I think that was actually quite debilitating, because I was then, from the start, projecting an image of I'm fine.
That you then had to keep up.
I'm fine. And obviously I wasn't. So I'd scrap that, and I would...
That one's gone.
Yeah, that one's off the list. And I would just give myself a break. Like, I don't think in 6 years I've stopped. Like, I've never actually stopped to just, like, you know, read a few books or actually be at one with my thoughts, because that's really scary, as we all know. Like, when you're feeling something a little bit intimidating, it's like, oh, I don't really want to think about that. So distraction. But I think I would just stop and press the pause button and maybe just like have to suffer a bit. But I think now, having distracted myself for 6 years, like, I don't think it's been a very good result sometimes. Like, I feel a bit knackered.
Sounds like you're ready now.
Yeah. So, and not to be scared of it. Like, I think, you know, when we stop, it's like, God, I've stopped. What am I going to do? And I've got that coming up, and I am feeling a bit like anxious about it. But just got to remind myself, like, it's just a pause. It's not a complete stop. Yeah. So yeah.
Sounds like a pause from the energy of keeping up the you kind of touched on it already. Like, even at work now, you're still having to do it.
Yeah, like
It sounds like you're ready to just stop doing that.
Yeah, and I don't know how to kind of develop that though, because it's something that I'm always going to feel to an extent, but I need to find a way of getting around these little, you know, awkward questions. And I suppose I have, to a point, because I've become more resilient to it. So people say, what are you doing at Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And I've got like my set phrases, you know, in my head. But I would like to be able to say to people, well, I don't actually like have a home anymore, but it's something I'm dealing with, and probably going to have my own home soon, or, you know, whatever. And what would people's reactions be? You know, if I said, oh, actually, my parents died, what would they say? I'm sorry, I can't be asked for that again. So like, it's like you don't know which way to go with it, but I would like to challenge myself
and get to that point.
Find new ways, because I'll, no doubt have to go through it again pretty soon, joining a new, workplace. But it's mad that even as a nurse working in a profession where we see patients every day going through this, you still feel a little bit strange when it's happening to you. So,
well, you just said that you'd give yourself a break. So I don't know if you are someone that's hard on yourself, just to remind that you are currently on a podcast talking about just, I think you've made a pretty big step.
Yeah, it is a big step, but it's taken me such a long time. Like, I would no way be able to sit here, and I'm actually giving you eye contact. That's like a really big thing. But I would no way have been able to do this a few years ago, because it's too scary, but it doesn't have to be scary. And it is life. Like, it is life, and it happens to a lot of people. And I do still tell myself every day, I'm like, I'm not the only person feeling this. Like, I know I'm not. Yeah. Somewhere there'll be somebody feeling just the same.
And it's like, we're coming up to Christmas now. Like, what has Christmas been? Is that a particularly difficult time to explain to people, or has it been hard for you?
Yeah, I think Christmas is hard because our plans tend to change every year depending on where we're going to spend it. So obviously Christmas is kind of charged with family and being together. And I guess, like, after everything happened, you start to spend time with family who you didn't spend that much time with before. So your routines change, your kind of traditions change. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a very different time of year. So when I think of Christmas now, I do still like really mourn the past, but I'm like, okay, let's just kind of get it done. But then I'm moving more towards like my own traditions, like my own kind of excitement for things. Like, got a new little niece and stuff, so that's really nice. But it's just a time of like forced, like, everyone feels it, don't they? If you're not feeling 100%, Christmas is an absolute bitch. Like, it's so in your face,
There's almost like an expectation to be happy around Christmas, though, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's sold as a happy season.
You have to be happy.
Yeah.
Jolly. And when you're told to be happy, or, come on, get on with it makes you even worse. But do you know what? It's getting better. It's getting so much better, and I don't dread it anymore. And yeah, I used to have so much envy for people when they would like go home with all the prezzies and put them all under the tree, and I was kind of like sofa hopping or going into different houses each day of Christmas, and that would always be a bit of a trigger. And I suppose even now I get it, but then I think actually there are loads of people who probably would love to have maybe a nice boyfriend or a niece or live in London. There are loads of things that people want but they don't have, and I think that's probably something I often remind myself of. Like, there's a lot here that you've got going on that's really good, and it is a hard thing to do because the two people you want to be around aren't here anymore, especially when things start changing, and you want them to see it. But I am quite frank about it, and I don't think my sisters always appreciate that, but I'm kind of like, well, 1 in 2 of us are going to get cancer. They don't appreciate that statistic. 1 of the 2 of us are going to get cancer. Like, although we have relatives who are older than us, like, we could die a lot sooner than them, and they're like, yes, we know that. And I'm like, but maybe I am a bit morbid. But now I just think, well, I see it every day. I live it every day, and it's just reality. And I suppose it has made me a little bit, like, not black-hearted, but I maybe lose my compassion for things.
Sounds realistic.
But yeah,
there has to be a point, I suppose, like, where you, and this is where the more you talk, the more I'm like learning. I feel like I'm learning and trying to understand it, because I feel like there's got to be a balance where you want to sit and kind of mourn and really kind of sit with it, and it sounds like you've done that for a long time, but there's also a point where you've got to be like, no, actually I want to enjoy Christmas. We should enjoy Christmas. They'd want us to enjoy Christmas. And that's where the kind of, I don't think it's black-hearted, I just think there has to be a line of where
there's only so much kind of like moping about you can do, and I'm really not a mopey person.
But I imagine you got to do a bit of that. You know what I mean? You got to accept.
Yeah.
I skipped that bit. So I recently lost my grandma only literally like 2 weeks ago. So very different because she's like 85 and lived a good life. But my dad got us to, before the funeral, listen to her favourite song around the dinner table with the whole family. And I was like, I don't want to do... Like, in my head, I was like, I'm going to sit here, but I don't...
You want to go straight to the change part.
Let's just get it over with sort of thing. But actually, I'm really glad we did it. Like, everyone around the table was crying. I was like... Honestly, I hated it, but now I'm quite glad we did it because we sat in it and kind of... my dad forced us to soak in the fact that, like, this is real. It is happening. Let's not avoid it.
Oh, that's really nice.
But then... So, yeah, it's a balance. It is a balance, isn't it? And I'm excited for you. I actually am, I think... hearing where you're at and kind of the way you're talking about it, and kind of you're looking ahead now and thinking, actually, do you know what? I do want to just take a bit of time for myself. I don't want to just keep putting on this bit of front to people. I just want to fuck it off and just be real. I'm excited for you're ready to do that. And I think, I don't know, I feel like today is like not first step, but a step in that process.
Yeah. It's a strange one because you think like, am I doing the right thing? But what is the right thing? Like, there's no right thing to do. You just kind of follow suit, don't you? Like,
but isn't the whole point that it's not whether it's the right thing or not? It's your thing.
Yeah.
You're doing the step that Lou wants to take.
Yeah.
And I think that to me sounds like it's the most important thing.
I just feel trust that. Like, we've just met. And I feel like if you said in your first few interactions, if I asked those questions that are quite standard to me and you went, to be honest, I lost my parents a few years ago. I don't want to talk about it, George. I know we've just met, but I really don't want to talk about it. Can we move on? I'd be like, yes, like give me that. So
I know, because you kind of think sometimes like, surely that gives me a bit of an edge. Like, I've gotten through this thing, but I don't know. Like, you try and sell yourself on the fact that you kind of have come through something pretty awful, and I'd like to work somewhere actually like that stands for something. Like not just what's written on a CV. And I'm sure there are places out there that would like 100% take that on board, but it's just like getting the feelers out there and knowing how people feel about it, and even going for interviews. Like it's a tricky one. It's hard to know which Lou to like bring out, and that shouldn't be a thing, but it is a thing. And I've got two very different sides, so it's like, how do I play this? And that's what I think when I go to work every day. I'm like, shall I just be that Lou, or shall I be that one? And
is one real and one not?
Yeah.
I want the real Lou.
It sounds like you know which Lou you want to be.
Yeah, it really is.
We've seen the real Lou today, and I think you're a fucking legend. Yeah. Honestly, I'm genuinely like, I think you're amazing. Like the way,
that's so nice.
I can't believe you've got through this without crying. To be honest, like,
I know. I was like, get me all this water, and I have necked it all. But like, it's a challenge to talk about it, but it's very cathartic. Like, you feel so good after you've done it. It's like going for a run, like kind of dread it in a way, but you know that it's going to bring about such a nice feeling inside. And I don't know why it's nice. It just is nice because it's nice to talk, isn't it?
Yeah, and you've the way you've like shared with us today, it's so like relatable as well. I've not had anywhere near the experience you've had, and I still feel able to connect with you. So I know I can't relate on the exact details to the extent, but I still feel like I get you very much. And like the way you talk about it's also, you're funny, you're articulate, so I feel like with this story in some way, I'm certain you're going to find that tribe that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Those people that you might not find new people. It might be that you just reconnect closer with, I don't know, like other people in your life that can get it and can resonate, or you might, or whatever. But I'm almost certain if you carry on in like this way, that will gravitate towards you. I'll never forget a quote one of our coaches, Ben, said to me once, and he says a load of bloody good stuff. And he said, the moment you start to be yourself, the world becomes your home. And it's just stuck with me because I just think that's so true. That when you bring the real Lou out, you'll create your own home, basically.
Oh, wise words. It's a nice feeling. It's nice to just be like free, and just be like, well, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And that's a really hard thing to do, especially when you have like delicate information. But it's.
But I think the way I feel, like, and it's not just us. There's potentially a lot of people listening to this as well. I feel like I want you to do that. I want you to bring your full self out there. I'm sure people listening will do the same.
I think we're gonna have to do like a part 2. I think. Yeah, we are. We're gonna bring you back.
People listening want a part 2.
Yeah.
They want to know. You put yourself. No, genuinely, people listening. What's it been like, Lou? The next 6 to 12 months, you've really put yourself out. You've been your full self in the real world. What's happened? I genuinely do. I think part 2 of yours. If we can do that, Scott. Yeah. Cool. Well, no, I think that's
I don't know how to wrap up because I just literally want to keep talking.
I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you for sharing.
Welcome.
Thank you for being so honest with us, and I feel lucky to hear it firsthand from you.
Yeah, it's been like a not just a pleasure, but like this is a gift, like a real gift. It is like
a Christmas gift.
So cheers, thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you.